Hi students and family members, it's Mr. Panza teaching you a strategy for elapsed time. Elapsed time is how much time has passed in between. We use what are called mountains, hills, and rocks. Mountain is worth 1 hour, a hill is 5 minutes, a rock is 1 minute. So you start a timeline. Your starter is right here, and the timeline tries to go all the way through until you get to the finish line, which would be your finish, and in this case it would be 4:28. So obviously, you want to start out with the most amount of time that you possibly could have, which in this case would be a mountain. A mountain would be 1 hour. You want to make sure you're not just labeling the fact that this is worth an hour, but you want to make a little timeline marker here so that you can determine, well, if I started at 2:53 and I'm fast forwarding an hour, it's going to be 3:53. Now I can either use hills or rocks to get to an easier time, for example, like 4 o'clock. So personally, I always try and keep it in order, which means I go from my mountains to my hills. My hill is worth 5 minutes, 3:53, or 5, 6, 7, 8 gets me to 3:58. So I mark that here, and I put the time down as 3:58. I apologize for the sloppy handwriting. After 5 minutes, you can then just do your little rocks, which would then get you to a nice friendly 4 o'clock hour. Now, the worksheet gives you the example, because you're at the friendly 4 o'clock hour, that you could just connect all the way and say, well, this whole space here is 28 minutes. My suggestion, or what I've been teaching the students, is to continue to use the mountains, hills, and rocks. In other words, let's go back to our hills. 4 o'clock at a hill gets me to 4:05. 4:05 at a hill gets me to 4:10. 4:10 at a hill gets me to 4:15. 4:15 at a hill gets me to 4:20. 4:20 at a hill doesn't get me to 4:28. I'm not too panicked about that, because I can just quickly change this. Say that 4:20 gets me to 4:25, and now I need to finish the timeline. Stretch it out. 26, 27, 28. 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. I get to my finish line eventually. 4:28 is the time. What I'm looking for is how much total time has passed. How did I determine that it was 1 hour 35 minutes? I go back to my mountains, hills, and rocks and add them up based on the units. The first unit is the mountain, which is the hour. There's only one, so 1 hour has passed. Look for my mountains next. There are no other mountains, so I move on to my hills and skip count by 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hills, I add them all together for my 35 minutes. Now, this is a bit of chicken scratch, and it's difficult to read. And tonight, your students are going to bring home a worksheet that looks like this. You can tell I've taught them a couple different ways to ensure that they get to the correct answer. Let me point out what I showed them today in class. First of all, I'm starting at 5:41. That's different from what the example showed you for tonight's homework. 2:53 jumped the first, meaning they didn't do mountains, they didn't do hills, they jumped right to rocks and got to 3 o'clock, and then jumped an hour. Personally, I always like to start by skip counting by hours. 5:41 to 6:41. Also notice that I've written the time vertically, straight up and down. That's going to help them organize their work a little bit better. So 5:41 to 6:41 is an hour. Then, instead of doing 5 minutes, I wanted to get to a friendly number, which means I needed to skip or bypass the hills and go to the rocks at 1 minute. 1, 2, 3, and 4 got me to 6:45. Now I could start doing my hills. 5 minutes gets me to 6:50. 5 more minutes gets me to 6:55. 5 more minutes gets me to 7 o'clock. And 5 more to 7:10. 7:15 or quarter after 7 to 7:20 to 7:25, and then my final little bump or rock gets me to 7:26. How did I get to 1 hour 45 minutes? Add it all up. My mountains first, there's 1 hour, it finishes with 1 hour. Then I go back and skip count by my hills, my 5 minutes, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and then add the rest of my rocks. So I'm at 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45 minutes. Nice and organized, making sure that the times are written, making sure that the amount of the mountain, the hill, or the rock is also written inside, and then adding it correctly. This is tonight's homework. It's front and back. I hope this video helped.